How fast can you get a Dark-type Pokemon? Well, being one of the first types added to the series, these Pokemon have certainly held a memorable spot in players' minds with their cool designs and sometimes far too overpowering presence. But while this tricky type sits in the middle of the pack in terms of numbers, it boasts a diverse roster thanks to its flexibility for what kinds of Pokemon can be included. And with Dark Pokemon being a great pairing for the season, as well as my personal favorite, in today's challenge, we are going to brave the shadows to determine just how fast you can catch this evil type in every Pokemon game. Now, although we have to start all of our runs from scratch, why not bolster our efforts with some real support? Thanks to Zen Market, the sponsor of today's video. Zen Market is a proxy shipping service helping you buy and ship your most wanted goods from Japanese sites without needing a local address or even knowing the language. You simply search for items from the integrated stores or paste the links from an item you found to add it to your cart. Once your order is checked, you simply add funds to your account to pay for it, then the goods will be ordered and delivered to their warehouse. Then enjoy 60 days of free storage for finding other items to add to your shipment, or send your items right away, all with a variety of shipping methods. Zen Market also offers an awesome loyalty program with balance credits and cash back just for using it. Personally, aside from all the great Pokemon and anime products you can find, I love being able to find CDs and merch from my favorite bands, as well as research materials for new videos. And on top of all this, if you sign up using my promo code SAMAJ, you will get 1,000 free Zen points right at the start. Just click my link below to sign up and start making your dream team today. For this challenge, we get to skip over Generation 1, since Dark is the only added type so far not retroactively applied to any Pokemon. But to make up for that missing game, the generation that introduced the type somehow has extremely limited options, with only 5 in total, 4 of which can only be found in the post-game, only 2 of these being available as soon as one even reaches Kanto, specifically on Route 7 where Houndour and Murkrow can be found and is passed by the speedrun after 2 hours and 35 minutes in, meaning the other option should be the easiest. But it's not quite that simple, as Eevee's new evolution, Umbreon, requires us to obtain 220 friendship to evolve into. And although the friendship mechanic and associated evolutions are a highlighted feature of these games, it is far from a quick and simple process. Thus, the first question here is whether we could get Umbreon faster than the world record can start exploring Kanto. Luckily, Eevee is simply gifted to us by Bill and Goldenrod after meeting them in the Ecruteak Pokemon Center, meaning we only need to obtain the 3rd badge to unlock Ecruteak and our future Dark type, which can be done in about 50 minutes, leaving us an hour and 45 to get our friendship and evolve. Speaking of which, Crystal has a distinct advantage in this department, as although friendship is gained upon level up in any game, Crystal doubles the amount if you are in that Pokemon's met location. On top of this, the speedruns are quite close up to this point, with Crystal having a small lead through the portions we would follow for this route anyways. And those leveling points are some of the biggest and certainly most consistent sources of friendship in the early game. But before jumping into all the methods for gaining friendship, we need to know where we start. In Gen 2, there are only 3 possible base friendships, 70 being the standard, 120 for hatching from an egg, and 200 for being caught in a friend ball. Thus, our gift Eevee will be at only 70, requiring a total of 150 points for us to route. It's also not quite that simple, as there are 3 friendship thresholds, below 100, between 100 and 199, and 200 and above, that determine how much friendship most methods provide. So now let's cover each method and their values, starting with the least relevant, daily grooming from Daisy Oak and Pallet Town, which is of course post-game only. However, the other grooming option is available to us and has the highest potential friendship offering at 10 points per session, that being the Haircut Brothers, who are conveniently located in Goldenrod. Now the pair of brothers vary by day, and the possible boost we get is random, with that 10-pointer between 0 and 199 friendship only offered by the younger one at a 10% rate, with a 60% chance of getting a single point, and this is again just a daily event. So we need to finish reviewing the other methods available, of which both learning a TM and using any battle item are identical, providing a point per use until you have 200. Alternatively, any vitamins provide 5, 3, or 2 points based on your threshold. Then we have a little boost of 3, 2, or 1 after finishing important battles, which impacts the entire party. And on that note, walking 512 steps always provides a single point to the party as well, leaving the only other method being leveling as mentioned before. But while each of these has its own costs and time and or money, one of them is severely misrepresented in its description alone, because those haircut brothers aren't truly once per day, as you can change your game's date at the starting screen, which resets daily events without even needing to alter the current time, meaning we could use haircuts to get just about all of our friendship and save the final bit for a level, since we need one to evolve anyways, and the friendship gain from leveling happens before the evolution check occurs. Plus, fighting the 3 trainers in the underground where we get the cuts not only gives us enough EXP to level in only 3 minutes, the Goldenrod underground is still considered Goldenrod, so we get the Met location boost. Now for which cuts to go for, even though the older brother has a slightly higher expected value per cut, we want to stick with the younger brother and the highest possible boost only, since we need to save between each completed cut to reset the clock. Thus we will be saving time and money by fishing for the max points, taking about 21 seconds per reset plus results check, and 44 seconds to save, change the clock, and save again to keep the clock in place for any resets. We can even save one of the final 4-point cuts by teaching Eevee 4 total TMs at the start, requiring us to just grab Swift and Union Cave, leaving 16 total 10% haircuts needed, an average of 160 soft resets, and 16 saves and date changes, totaling to about 68 minutes of time, which translates to 1 hour and 57 minutes into the speedrun, solidifying Umbreon as the winner in the Gen 2 race already. But I am delighted to share that we can do even better. Now, it's not going to come from focusing on leveling or walking, both of which will prove to be far slower methods than the brothers. Instead, even though money is a limiting factor which completely rules out vitamins, X speeds or specials are always at least 1/5 of the cost per friendship point comparatively. Of course, they do need to be used in battle, but this isn't actually an issue, as all we need to do is grab the old rod in the center before Union Cave, and then after getting our Eevee and X items, we can simply fish right outside of town for the 85% Magikarps, which only have Splash. Thus, with our base 70 friendship, we could use 130 X items across 4 Magikarps to avoid wasting time with any struggle turns, to hit the max possible 200 friendship through this method alone, leaving us just 20 away and taking only 15.5 minutes. And 20 points equals exactly 5 levels of friendship if we are in Goldenrod, meaning 4 or 5 rare candies along with the 44.5k money needed for X items would get us to Umbreon. Now, those familiar with the region or the Dragon Run know there are relatively limited resources available to us solely by foot, with the best payoffs being returning to Azalea for a charcoal, getting Rock Smash for an HP up in the Burn Tower, a hidden nugget between the Miltanks at Moo Moo Farm, returning Kenya to the NPC on Route 31 for Dream Eater and the guard's HP up, and a few valuables at the Lake of Rage, which include a rare candy, of which there is only one other in reach, up in Olivine Lighthouse. Meaning even with the approximate 10k we could have after finishing the 3rd gym and grabbing the best payoffs, we would still be short some money. But far more importantly, we wouldn't have the minimum 4 candies needed after using our X items to evolve in 5 levels within Goldenrod. There is a simple solution to all of this though. We just get Surf and the badge to use it from Ecruteak to expand our options, providing exactly 3 more rare candies, one in Violet City, another just east of our house on Route 27, and the last, perfectly, below Goldenrod on Route 34 inside the fenced area. This of course opens up some more item options, with the best ironically being along our path, as there is a PP up also in Violet City, and that item right beside us in the fenced area is actually a second nugget. Thus, with the extra money picked up from the Kimono Girls, Burn Tower Rival, and Ecruteak Gym, we could simply choose the optimal items along our path for the rest of the funds we require. However, some of these candies are just about as far apart from each other as possible within our exploration area, which brings into question if getting Fly would be worth the trip and single additional gym, adding around 8.5 minutes, but keeping us still over 20 minutes ahead of the haircut route by the time we get our candies, money, and complete the run. But a reason this is questionable is because while Fly fixes the distance issue, there is a much faster option for doing this, which only requires us to, I can't believe I'm going to say this, get a coin case and head into the game corner to spend 2k on some coins for an Abra with teleport. This allows us to set a warp point in Ecruteak, not only to warp back after the lighthouse candy, but to let us return after the Lake of of Rage candy, the trip through Violet and back home to Route 27 for their items, and then finally we can even hit the center after getting our Eevee in order to warp back into town once we grab the Route 43 rewards for our X item shopping trip. And since getting the coin case plus Abra combined with gathering the items using it takes under 5 minutes, it is clearly the best traveling method. But it's not the final detail for this route, as we know it takes just over 3 minutes to get a level in the underground, which means we need to see if the slowest rare candy takes longer than this. And with the trip to Olivine plus the Lighthouse's 3 mandatory battles taking almost 5 minutes, double that of any other candy, it is clearly the outlier. And there are some other positives of going for that underground level instead, since the time to bike back to Goldenrod from Ecruteak compared to Eevee fighting either trainer blocking the coin case underground are about equal, we could save getting Abra until having Bill return to Goldenrod, heading right back, getting our Eevee early, and battle the first 2 trainers near the coin case, leaving the final one for after our later X item grind. But where it gets interesting is that it would give Eevee 3 points of friendship for being on our team during the gym battle with Morty, saving us a few X item purchases and turns. Now there are some other trade-offs though, as we lose access to Super Repels, only purchasable in Olivine at this point. We also lose a good chunk of money by skipping the 4 trainers required to reach that Lighthouse candy, but that can be made up in under a minute by simply grabbing the charcoal in Azalea, post the Farfetch'd return, which was otherwise unneeded as the slowest valuable item option along our path. And when accounting for all of the differences, I found skipping the Lighthouse could save around 45 seconds, if it wasn't for the fact that we could no longer use Headbutt on Croconaw, which becomes an issue against the Kimono Girls where the speedrun plans to spam it on almost every turn, and although debatably beatable without the move given some luck, it still takes around a minute longer from my testing, leaving visiting Olivine Lighthouse for a 5 candy route, along with Abra for transportation and a late Eevee as the best options to pair with our X item money method for the friendship evolution. But even after all this, there is still one more option we need to check, because we do have access to a method that will increase our Eevee's starting friendship while lowering its base level, hatching a new Eevee entirely, as although we only have our single gift Eevee, Dittos are just south of us on the daycare route anyways. Plus, if we have a female Eevee, we can simply catch a Pokemon in the field egg group for the other parent, which works perfectly as Rattata can be found on Route 34 already at a 6 times higher rate of 30%. Then all we need to do is drop the pair off and bike around until we get an egg. This also comes with the benefit of being able to be hatched anywhere in the locations available on foot in order to further take advantage of the double friendship per level in Crystal. And since this Eevee hatches at level 5 with 120 starting friendship, it only needs to reach level 23 to evolve from leveling alone. So after checking all possible options, the most ideal hatch locations seem to be back on Route 43 before the Lake of Rage, which includes not only a solid handful of trainers with plenty of evolved Pokemon providing extra experience, but a set of night encounters that are also evolved Pokemon 60% of the time, and offer over 300 EXP per battle, the best expected value per wild battle currently available in Grass. On top of this, Noctowl and the Venonat line still have Foresight, which they can waste turns with and potentially allow Eevee to get some relatively early wins on its own. We also know that there is a rare candy just above us at the Lake of Rage, and in combination with 4 TMs and 2 X items, we can save another level, making the grind stop at just level 21. But even with these potential upsides, and a route only even competitive due to Crystal's huge boost to the leveling system, there are some major issues here. First off, the other parent is going to either acquire the only 5% Ditto encounter, or resetting Bill's Eevee until it's female, an only slightly better 12.5% chance as it is required here to get an Eevee egg without Ditto. After comparing the average time to find and catch Ditto versus the average number of resets for a female Eevee and encounters for a male Rattata, the Bill resets are expected to be just a few seconds faster. Yet this is far from the last issue, as Eevee and either parent will fall into the slowest rate to generate an egg since the Pokemon are different species with the same original trainer despite receiving Eevee from Bill, which leads to a minuscule 3.9% chance to find an egg every 256 steps, or an average of 25.6 attempts, which is about 14 minutes of biking. Plus, the only indication of an egg being generated is from seeing the attendant in the yard, meaning we would need to stay in the area to put in the additional time for egg checks as well. Even worse though is that this egg won't hatch anytime soon, as Eevee has the second longest hatch time possible normally at 35 egg cycles, which will take around 18.5 minutes to hatch. With all of these issues compounding together, it is expected to take around 38 minutes before we could have our hatched Eevee, in comparison to our other route which would only have 44 X items left to use, just 5 minutes left until Umbreon. And the final crack in this eggshell route is that Eevee falls into the medium fast experience group, which is actually the second slowest group in Gen 2 through the levels we are covering. So with just 5 minutes left on average before the gift route is done, even if we could pick up enough money while waiting for the egg to generate or hatch, there isn't enough time to get the friendship needed. Thus, we can finally end this rather unfriendly to route run by sticking with our gift Eevee, X item spam, and 5 candies in order to obtain the first dark type of the challenge. Now thankfully, the Hoenn region makes dark types become just about as easy as possible to find, with Poochyena being an encounter on the first route, and if we play on Emerald, which is already a tad faster by this point due to the rivals' switched locations, it gives the pup a whopping 45% encounter rate here, and a whole 60% rate just a few steps further on Route 103, both of which are better rates than either game have to the west on 102. Thus, after getting our Pokeballs, we simply head up to Route 101 since the odds are high enough to stay in the earliest grass, and end up with our fastest catch ever. But Gen 4 will also be joining in on the simpler solutions, as although one of the signature Evil Team's Pokemon, Stunky, can be found on Route 206 just after completing the second gym and Galactic events, we can find a dark type even earlier in Eterna Forest with Murkrow, a 20% night encounter in Diamond only, thus also providing our version answer. Now there is still a bit to discuss, as Murkrow can be found at 2 different levels, and a Repel Trick can be done even with Cheryl on our team. However, we can only get a 5% boost, which won't be worth the setup since there's already a 36% chance for Murkrow per double encounter. Thus, the only question left is which balls we can use, as Murkrow has the quite low catch rate of 30, only a 4.4% chance per throw at full with our currently purchasable options. Interestingly, Nest Balls can be bought just beyond the forest in Eterna, which provide a much better 14% chance. However, the 2 double battles and traveling time will cost 4 minutes, making this slower than simply spamming Pokeballs. We can, however, pick up something just as good along our way, as an NPC in Oreburgh's northwesternmost building gives us a Dusk Ball, and with this only adding 21 seconds to the run, just a bit slower than the fastest possible turn with a Pokeball fail at 14 seconds, the Dusk Ball's almost 3 times higher odds are worth the time. Alongside this, we will of course want to weaken it the best we can and knock out Chansey if Cheryl has the chance to KO the Crow. Other than that, we simply make sure to use all our remaining money on Pokeballs after getting the repels needed to reach the forest. And luckily, after getting Murkrow into the red, the single Dusk Ball makes our first difficult catch of the run. But real quick, if you are enjoying this or any of the previous catching challenges, subscribing would help a ton in supporting the series. Plus, if we make it to 50k subscribers, I will start working on catching a shiny in every game as fast as possible. Okay, now it's time to move on to a few complicated remakes. Returning back to Kanto and Fire Red and Leaf Green does provide us a chance to get some dark types, but not until the post-game, as the few Johto dark types that are present in this game are locked in the second batch of the Serebii Islands, which we can't access until getting the National Dex. Somewhat similar to Gen 4's National Dex debacle, there is a requirement for unlocking it in these games, this time needing you to obtain 60 unique Pokemon. And since we can't evolve Eevee into Umbreon at any point in these games due to the lack of a time system, we are stuck dealing with the Dex. Now luckily for us, this journey has already been optimized by the speedrun community, since upgrading the Dex and completing the Serebii Island tasks are prerequisites for the final challenge of the game, Elite Four Round 2, which has become a popular speedrun category partly due to this interesting optimization challenge required. Thus, we will have a general route to follow for the game already, but that doesn't quite solve our question, as the 2 immediate dark types that can be accessed after opening up the rest of the islands are in different locations, with Sneasel in 4 Islands Icefall Cave versus Murkrow in 5 Islands Lost Cave, both at a lowly 5% rate. Now, the speedrun goes straight to 4 Island and into Icefall Cave, but nothing is stopping us from instead visiting 5 Island and heading for Murkrow. The world record is able to go from the point we get our island options to Sneasel's room in 40 seconds. Surprisingly, 5 Island and the trip to Lost Cave also takes this long, but in terms of catch rate, Sneasel itself has double Murkrow's, making an Ultra Ball at full 16.8% versus 8.1% on the bird. However, However, since neither of these rates are favorable and we need to go through Silph Co anyways, we can grab the Master Ball here as it only adds 11 seconds. And it is optimal to use for our Dark Catch as either option has a lower catch rate than any of the final catches we would need for the National Dex requirement. Further, each option does have a few more differences to cover, because Sneasel actually has a repel trick that can be implemented with a level 30 Mon, which isn't too much trouble given the amount of Pokemon we will be catching during the run. However, Murkrow has something even better, because within the maze of rooms that is the Lost Cave, there are a handful of item rooms that have a different encounter table, which boosts Murkrow all the way up to 20%. And with the closest item room just a few steps from our starting position, this puts Murkrow far ahead of Sneasel, even with the repel trick boosting it to a 9.1% rate. But one detail I've yet to mention is that these dark types are actually version exclusives, with Sneasel only in Leaf Green and Murkrow in Fire Red. Thankfully though, this is in our favor, as speedruns are played on Fire Red largely thanks to the much lower prices for Pokemon prizes in the game corner compared to Leaf Green. Thus, Murkrow is left even further ahead, providing both the first dark type in Kanto and our first catch in a Master Ball. Which means it's time to head back to Johto. And as you might have feared, the choice to keep most encounters consistent with the base games leaves us in just about the same spot as before, with the post-game for Kanto's Route 7 or getting the Eevee for Bill for another friendship grind. And just like before, an Umbreon seems plenty feasible with the many options for friendship, compared to reaching the post-game Kanto route around 2 hours and 48 minutes into the run. However, one of the bigger additions in the remakes, the Safari Zone west of Cianwood, does actually have something. Because while the Safari Houndour line and a few other dark types are locked until the post-game due to needing the blocks feature, Murkrow can simply be found in the swamp, this time at a solid 30% rate at night. While we know Murkrow has a low catch rate, which translates to only a 6.25% per Safari Ball, and even comes with a 47.5% flee rate per turn, the Safari Zone no longer limits our time in any way, meaning we have 30 shots at our bird, which is an 85.6% chance per session. Now we can't access the zone by simply reaching Cianwood, but the only extra requirement is quickly beating its gym, grabbing the secret potion, and bringing it back to Amphi. Then after leaving the lighthouse, we are informed the zone is open, which can be done in around 21 minutes after reaching Ecruteak. Finally, we just have to head to the zone before we can start our session. And while this time to catch a crow is certainly variable, that doesn't rule this route out. Rather, what does is the fact that this new Safari Zone, which is comprised of 6 distinct areas at a time, starts in one of 10 default area arrangements. And although Murkrow's swamp area is found in 6 of those, there is no way to adjust the starting configuration if we miss that 60% shot until completing the Warden's first 2 challenges, the second of which requires waiting 3 gameplay hours to trigger, which means we need to compare this to the only feasible route left, Umbreon. But funnily, despite not being able to manipulate game time to help the Safari route, we can still change the system's time in order to get multiple haircuts, which is even better this time around as these boosts are no longer impacted by a Pokemon's total friendship. Now the rest of the friendship opportunities are generally the same, however the encountered area boost from leveling in Crystal is not present, being a feature mostly unique to that game. And while we could still think about the money grind and X-item route, there is one new friendship tool in particular that makes the optimal solution far more clear, that being the Soothe Bell, a hold item that increases all friendship boosts by 50% rounded down, meaning that those 10-point haircuts are actually worth 15 all the way to our goal, resulting in needing just 10 perfectly. Of course, the biggest question left with this method is to determine how likely the 10-point cuts are. Interestingly though, no source I could find online when researching stated what the new odds were exactly. And we do already know that the remakes differ from the base games since the brothers give the same 3 bonuses, unlike the originals. Thus, I began digging through the code-based resources for the remakes available online, and after searching for the brothers' dialogue, I was able to backtrack to the lines related to the haircuts. From here, I not only found the results, but also a clear answer for our run, because the remakes thankfully decided to provide the older brother with a whopping 60% chance to get the 10-point boost, while the younger remains at the original 10%. So with the older brother still only costing 500, us having well over the needed 5k, and a 60% success rate, meaning we will on average need just 6 soft resets at only 29 seconds apiece, the Umbreon route is shaping up to be the optimal choice. Now the final major difference in the route is that the Eevee is now gifted at level 5. Despite this, a grinding route is completely out of the question, as without a met area bonus, we would need around 25 levels to get the evolution, which is still a time-consuming task in the remakes. And this low level is also favorable in the haircut plan, since battling the Lickitung trainer in the underground results in a level, which along with a candy at the very end of the cuts allows for keeping a 5-pointer while still hitting our target. Plus, this final candy is actually one of only 2 pre-surf additions, simply hidden in the corner of Ecruteak. Now the final note here is that while changing time no longer requires a password, we need to actually have a day change occur in-game to reset the events. Thus we will always roll the clock to 11:59 PM and the date back once when changing the time, a 55-second process that then requires us to wait about 32 seconds until the haircut. This wait actually lets us battle the trainer and get our early level though, reducing the time added by the trainer to only 8 seconds, thus taking the time to get the Soothe Bell, Candy, and Eevee in combination with the expected time for the underground segment leaves us with an evolution before the Safari route can even start its hunt, meaning this time we actually do get to stick to styling our Eevee at the salon and obtain another Umbreon, ending our time dealing with the odd options for dark types in their origin region. And while this doesn't end the remakes entirely, it might as well, as the last 2 are identical to the originals, with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire just needing to run up to Route 103 for a 40% Poochyena, and Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl still grabbing the Dusk Ball in Orberg and catching Murkrow in Eterna Forest, meaning we can finally go to a new region, but again not for very long, as Unova continues the Gen 3 idea of an early game dark type, with Purloin on the second route of the base games at 20%, as well as the first route visited in the sequels. And although Gen 6 also has some early game options, there is a bit more to discuss here, as the earliest location with a dark type is on Route 5, that of course not being Pancham who needs a dark in the party to evolve into a dark type, but rather the Horde encounter's Scraggy. However, the problem here isn't just that we need to knock out all but one to make a catch, or that it's only a 35% Horde encounter, it's that these only have a 5% chance to occur in the first place, meaning it would take around 57 encounters on average to even find one. But if we look just up ahead to Route 8, we find not one but 2 dark types in Absol and the new Inkay. The best combined odds appear to be in the flowers at 35%, but if we dodge a bit of experience along our way, we can keep our Farfetch'd at level 15, which allows for a Repel Trick in the grass for a 45% shot at a dark type, which in combination with a couple of quick balls we can grab in Lumio City, especially in case of Absol's low catch rate, I was left guaranteed a catch of the Inkay I found on my 3rd encounter, ending another quicker gen. Or it would if not for one more sweet trick, as you can in fact force a Horde encounter by using Sweet Scent or Honey, with 3 of the treats being gifted to us from Trevor after beating Tierno perfectly on Route 5. Even better, we can grab up to 3 over on Route 4 to give us a chance of entirely skipping the battle, which is exactly what I was able to manage. So after tragically knocking out 4 wild dark types, we can simply use Pokeballs for a solid 34% chance per throw and get our first Horde encounter catch of the series. But now we can breeze through Alola, as both the base and Ultra games find the now dark Alolan Rattata as soon as we can catch Pokemon on Route 1 at night, with the base games being 10% more likely and either option reaching this point at the same time. However, since this section of the game is held at twilight, we actually need to wait until the next day, at which point both options are still equal, and although Lily forces us to the beach, both games have 30% dark options here, with the Ultras gaining Inkay, but this new addition is strictly a harder catch, meaning we can keep with the base games to make the second quickest catch so far, and trailing just behind it are the Let's Go games, which although keep the spirit of the originals by not including dark type encounters, does include regional form trades, the earliest of which is in Cerulean, letting us swap a Rattata for our second Alolan version. But we aren't quite done with the rapid fire runs, as Sword and Shield contains another Route 1 dark type to handle in Nickit. Now, this is a pretty rare spawn at 5%, but is thankfully a visible encounter, meaning we don't need to waste time on random battle misses when searching for it. Comparatively, Route 2 does include a couple more options, with hidden Purloins at 10% and visible Zigzagoons at a lowly 2% alongside the now 15% Fox. Thus, when sticking with visible encounters on Route 2, we would have a 17% chance to find our target per spawn. However, this would require dealing with 3 more minutes of scenes between the routes, and with 8 spawns already beyond the first, it is likely faster to search here since we can always reset the spawns if need be. Plus, any Squovet will run away from us, which generates a new spawn anyways, giving us extra chances at our Fox. Exactly what happened for my run, letting us make another first route catch. Finally, heading back to Legends Arceus, the earliest dark types you would expect to catch reside in the second area, the Crimson Mirelands, which we could freely access around an hour and 7 minutes into a run. But since Eevee can be caught as soon as finishing up the tutorial in the Fieldlands, around 24 minutes in, we would be tasked with once again finding out if it's possible to evolve into an Umbreon faster than the remaining 40 minutes. Now, since we last touched on Friendship, the base amount for all Pokemon has dropped to 50, but luckily the evolution requirement has dropped even more, down to 160. While this is still a hefty requirement, especially without access to a Soothbell style route, the Legends games instead provide a point of friendship whenever we gain EXP. And since throwing Eevee at trees and ores provides EXP, we could freely run through the Fieldlands and reach the friendship threshold needed in under half the time we have to work with. But thankfully, there is one final fishy option to cover, because there is in fact a dark type that can be caught in the Fieldlands without a distortion, that being Hisuian Quillfish. Initially, I wrote these off as an option, since I presumed Basculegion would be required to catch these higher level water spawns. However, after my attempts at luring them over using the many berries I had from testing an Umbreon route, I found that we would be able to interact with them. And while throwing balls can work if they don't detect you, after the first we will usually want to start a battle, where we can have at least 4 more attempts with a full party, which is actually plenty, as Hisuian Quillfish has the 3rd highest catch rate in the game despite a Jotonian Quillfish being on the more difficult side at 45, leaving us at a solid 16.3% chance per throw. With the fact it only takes a couple minutes to make it over to their location in the Sandgem Flats while picking up some berries along the way, Quillfish proves to be far faster than Umbreon. Thus, we not only get to catch our highest level dark type of the run, but we avoid the tedium of a 3rd Umbreon thanks to our fishy friend. Finally, we get to move on to the games where a pack of Dark-type Pokemon are thrown at us out the gate. But things aren't quite that simple, because we can't actually catch any of these, and it appears that the spawns in the Inlet Grotto are predetermined until we finish the tutorial there, and sadly we can't simply walk back into the cave after that point either. Even worse, there aren't any immediate Dark types to find within South Prov 1, meaning we would have to do our favorite trick of jumping over to Prov 4 where Mastiff can be immediately found at a decent weight and with a solid chance to catch. But with our classic jump in mind, there is actually another spot that we can use it at, as back on Pokepath, the rocks near the start can be cleared thanks to the various spawns atop it, which lets us hop back down on the other side of the fence, letting us make our way back to the grotto. Now, despite being able to do this trick as soon as we finish the catching tutorial, reaching the beach triggers both of the next 2 cutscenes, with the latter forcing the legend section to start, at which point we can no longer access any Houndour even if they could be there before this, which means the earliest we can freely explore the grotto is post our first trip there. All we have to do is head back down Pokepath, jump up for a battle, and make our way over towards the beach. From here, the normal spawns are in effect, meaning we can quickly find a Houndour, and with a 51% chance per throw, we will finally be able to add one of the original Dark types to the list of winners and end the challenge. Making it out of the darkness that was this challenge after a total time of 10 hours, 4 minutes, and 11 seconds, the Dark type slots into the faster half of our runs, but not without plenty of interesting scenarios that were certainly more fun to explore than I first expected. And if you want to see some of those longer challenges, definitely go check out the Legendary or Ditto videos next. As always, I would love to hear what you thought and what you might want to see in future videos. Also, for anyone who recently watched the Roses video, I'm still planning to put out a follow-up on that, but those longer challenges took up a lot of my time this year. With that in mind, I'm excited to see what we might get to do next. Until then though, thanks so much for watching, and more to come soon.